2 inches they're all up here. At the top of the mountain, Elder Wu and the others sat cross-legged with smiles on their faces. They looked at the few people who had finally climbed up the mountain with great difficulty, and their expressions were quite profound. Xiaoyan wiped the sweat off his forehead and silently looked at the others, including Mu Yiyue. They were all panting and sweating profusely. All of you must be tired. Try circulating the Origin Monarch Qi in your bodies and see if there is any difference. Elder Wu stood up and stood against the wind. His robe was fluttering in the wind. Xiaoyan and the others were stunned when they heard this. After which, they tried circulating the Origin Monarch Qi in their bodies. In an instant, they discovered that the Origin Monarch Qi could not circulate smoothly in this place. It was as if they had encountered a great resistance. The air here is extremely thin and there are very few Origin Monarch Qis. Therefore, if you wish to win here, you must end this battle quickly. Here, you will be training your explosive force. Under extremely dangerous circumstances, how powerful can your explosive force be in an instant? Elder Wu smiled and suddenly said in a deep voice, without the slightest hint of a joke in his voice. Xiaoyan and the others felt their hearts skip a beat when they heard this. After which, they nodded their heads. They looked at their surroundings. Xiaoyan also mused in his heart. Since this was the case, he should unleash his full strength from the start. He must not hide anything anymore. Crack. As the 5 of them were deep in thought, they suddenly heard a rubbing sound behind them. They turned around and saw a few young men leaping up and standing firmly on the mountaintop. Yuan Tianmu? Seeing a familiar figure among them, Xiaoyan could not help but be stunned. Then, he raised his eyebrows and quickly looked at the few people. Since these people came up together with Yuan Tianmu, could it be that they were the so-called experts of Realm and Valley? All of a sudden, Xiaoyan's eyes focused. He looked at a young man who was standing at the back of the group. The young man had black hair that flowed down like a waterfall. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He had a tall and straight figure, and his body seemed to have a natural grace. Even among the other similarly handsome young men, he was quite eye-catching. Xiaoyan's heart skipped a beat when he saw this young man. He pursed his lips and didn't say anything in the end. This guy gave him a strange feeling. Not even Yuan Tianmu had such a feeling. You guys are here. He glanced at the young men. Elder Wu and the other elders nodded without any surprise. However, when they looked at one of the young men, they were slightly surprised. Mu Yuyang, it's rare for you to have the time to come. Elder Wu smiled. His voice was much calmer when he faced Mu Yuyang. After all, the latter's strength wasn't any weaker than his. Furthermore, he was so young, his future was limitless. Elder Wu, Mu Yuyang returned the smile. His smile was like the bright sunlight, extremely approachable. Mu Yuyang, Yuan Tianmu, Zhang Li Jing, Zhou Alliance's Zhan Kai, Wei Li. Wu Shaoqi's eyes swept across the few of them. She pouted and did not say anything. However, her eyes revealed an extremely powerful light. She had heard about the matters in Realm and Valley from her grandfather. Because of this, Realm and Valley had always been her dream. Sooner or later, she would definitely enter it. Zhu Tianwo also glanced at the few of them. When he saw Zhan Kai's gaze, his expression slightly fluctuated. After that, he shifted his gaze away and didn't say anything. Lu Xiangyang's gaze was hidden as he looked at Mu Yuyang. Even though he was standing behind everyone, he was still unable to conceal the aura on Mu Yuyang's body. Just by standing there, he felt a kind of pressure. This is a true expert. The previous leader of the punishment department. This time, we must defeat Wu Shaoqi and become the leader. After that, we will enter the Realm and Valley. Lu Xiangyang lowered his head. He was roaring in his heart. Mu Yuyang still had a smile on his face as everyone looked at him. He just looked at Mu Yiyue and didn't say anything. Among these people, there was one that was worthy of his attention. At present, only Mu Yiyue was worthy of his attention. Alright, the 5 of you. The elders have finished their discussion just now. The first match will be held between Wu Shaoqi and Lu Xiangyang. Xiaoyan and Zhu Tianwo will be the second match while Mu Yiyue will be the second one. If you have any objections, bring it up now. He shifted his gaze to Xiaoyan and the other 3. Elder Wu said in a solemn voice. Xiaoyan and the others looked at each other and shook their heads. Mu Yiyue was undoubtedly the strongest amongst them. Even Wu Shaoqi did not have much confidence in defeating her. Xiaoyan naturally did not have any objections. After listening to Elder Wu's words, he looked at Zhu Tianwo. He was very curious about the latter's strength. The Xiao had said that the large success sacred spirit fire body could even suppress the monarch flame. Currently, both he and Zhu Tianwo were considered weak. However, he did not know if the current Zhu Tianwo could affect his monarch flame. Since there are no objections, the first match will be decided by Wu Shaoqi and Lu Xiangyang. Remember, let's end this quickly. Otherwise, the origin monarch chi will be consumed even faster. Seeing that no one had any objections, Elder Wu nodded his head and said with a solemn expression. When he mentioned Wu Shaoqi's name, his emotions did not change at all. Clearly, he was also a person who differentiated between public and private matters. All right. When he heard that the opponent was Wu Shaoqi, Lu Xiangyang's eyes lit up, and the scar on his face became even more ferocious. He couldn't help but reveal a smile on his face. It was as he had wished. If he could defeat Wu Shaoqi here, the position of the punishment department's captain would belong to him. Su! Just as Wu Shaoqi and Lu Xiangyang were standing at the same time, a rushing wind sound was suddenly heard. In the next moment, a long spear broke through the air and flew towards them. It was like an azure dragon, firmly stabbing into the top of the mountain. The moment the long spear appeared, Mu Yuyang, who was sitting cross-legged in the distance, had a flash in his eyes. Then, he smiled and didn't say anything. "I'm sorry." In the next moment, a low and powerful voice sounded. Everyone looked once again, and a young man wearing a black robe had already appeared by the side of the spear. He extended his hand, and the spear was withdrawn along with a faintly discernible dragon roar. "Me too." Just as Lin Dao's words sounded, a beautiful figure floated over and revealed her body. An extremely beautiful woman slowly appeared. Her beauty was not inferior to Mu Yiyu's. Compared to the latter, it was even more ethereal. Lin Dao, Su Qingwu. Xiaoyan involuntarily frowned when he heard Mu Yiyu's soft voice by the side. His eyes quietly looked at the black-robed man at that time. He could clearly sense a cold and murderous aura from the latter's body. Lin Jian's younger brother, Lin Dao. Xiaoyan looked at the black-robed man thoughtfully. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This fellow was indeed extraordinary. The killing intent on his body was so strong that it was the first time he had seen it among the young generation. "Let's begin." He glanced at Lin Dao and Su Qingwu. Elder Wu didn't say anything. He shouted at Wu Shaoqi and Lu Xiangyang, but he was shocked in his heart. This time, it was truly unbelievable. It was fine if it was Mu Yuyang, but Lin Dao had come out as well. Following Elder Wu's order, Wu Shaoqi and Lu Xiangyang didn't hide anything. In an instant, two vast energies slowly rose up, tearing the surrounding air apart. Nine Flames Solar Finger. Lu Xiangyang let out a stern shout. He immediately unleashed his Monarch skill. The Monarch skill with the power of a high-grade Monarch spell. After the former was used, a spiritual light emerged on his finger. In the next moment, a roaring giant dragon covered in red flames rushed towards Wu Shaoqi. Along the way, there were continuous explosions. Wu Shaoqi did not dare to underestimate Lu Xiangyang. She extended her delicate hand and the origin monarch chi within her body surged wildly. In an instant, both of her hands were covered by the origin monarch chi. As she waved her hand, it seemed as if the air was being torn apart. "Great Nirvana hand!" Wu Shaoqi softly cried out. Both of her hands suddenly struck out and firmly grabbed the huge head of the fire dragon. The origin chi in her hand surged. In an instant, most of the fire dragon had already been exhausted. Kai! Suddenly, the origin chi behind Wu Shaoqi scattered. Lu Xiangyang had already appeared behind her with a smile on his face. His claws were like dragons as they struck out and ruthlessly smashed towards Wu Shaoqi's back. Lu Xiangyang's hands were like a dragon as he attacked Wu Shaoqi with a force that could pierce through clouds and shatter rocks. The origin chi was surging, obviously not holding back at all. Wu Shaoqi frowned slightly, but her expression did not change at all. The origin monarch chis on her delicate hands were overflowing in all directions. She was still using up the attack of the fire dragon in front of her. It seemed like she did not have the slightest bit of defense against Lu Xiangyang's attack. Elder Wu frowned but still did not shout out. Under such circumstances, he could only watch from the sidelines. Boom! Lu Xiangyang's palms hit Wu Shaoqi's back hard. In an instant, with a loud bang, the joy in Lu Xiangyang's eyes disappeared. Wu Shaoqi, who was standing in front of him, slowly disappeared. Oh! In an instant, Lu Xiangyang sensed something. His body flashed and he barely dodged Wu Shaoqi's ungouty heavy punch. The faint pain on his shoulder caused Lu Xiangyang to frown. He looked at Wu Shaoqi, who was slowly appearing, and his eyes were as dark as water. You want to compete with me in speed? Wu Shaoqi looked at Lu Xiangyang with a smile, but her aura did not stop at all. It continuously surged within her body. In just one round, she could already feel the origin monarch qi in her body becoming sluggish. It was extremely difficult to pass through. I have forgotten about this. Lu Xiangyang clenched his teeth. After which, he let out a soft snort. Both of his hands suddenly stretched out. Majestic origin monarch qi surged out from his palms, causing the whistling wind on the mountaintop to stop. It also attracted everyone's attention. The powerful strength that Lu Xiangyang had suddenly unleashed shocked Wu Shaoqi. After which, a smile appeared on her pretty face. This feeling was the real battle. As she thought about it, Hong Long. The origin monarch qi in Wu Shaoqi's body started roaring crazily. Since that was the case, she should show the strength that she had obtained from cultivating an illusory spirit realm. In an instant, two vast energies soared to the sky from the top of the heaven pillar peak. The powerful energy waves caused the elders to frown. In just half a year, these two people had become even stronger. Xiaoyan's eyes were also filled with seriousness. Although Wu Shaoqi and Lu Xiangyang's strength were only at the sovereign realm, he believed that with their strength, they would be able to exchange a few blows even if they were at the monarch emperor. Back then, Yuan Tianmu's strength had already reached the peak of monarch king. Although Wu Shaoqi and Lu Xiangyang's strength was far from that, they had also reached the strength of 5 sovereign realms. Thunder Fire Emperor Technique. Lu Xiangyang suddenly lifted his head. Both of his eyes were filled with a scarlet red color. Both of his hands were suddenly pressed together. In the next moment, a majestic origin monarch qi surged out like lightning and smashed towards Wu Shaoqi. Along the way, the lightning was furious and scarlet red hair shook the space. Heaven Fighting Seal, Wu Shaoqi gently shouted. Her hands were placed in front of her chest. A bright light rose from her palm. Within the light, a seal the size of her palm was dancing. The power contained within it caused Xiaoyan's expression to change slightly. Is this the monarch skill that Zhuang He casted? Sensing the familiar feeling, Xiaoyan could not help but be stunned for a moment. Then, he frowned. The heaven fighting seal that Wu Shaoqi used was not only stronger than Zhuang He's. There seemed to be some other feeling in it. Elder Wu was startled as well. He was extremely familiar with Wu Shaoqi's heaven fighting seal. When she came out of illusory spirit realm, he had also experienced the power of the heaven fighting seal. In just a few days, he could feel a strange feeling from it. It was hard to tell what it was. In the next moment, in front of everyone's eyes, the palm-sized seal whistled past and gently collided with Lu Xiangyang's lightning fire emperor technique. After casting the monarch skill, both of their faces turned slightly pale. At the peak of the heaven pillar peak, using the monarch skill had consumed nearly twice as much origin monarch qi as before. Both of them felt a wave of powerlessness in their bodies. It could be said that this was the time to witness the outcome of the battle. Buzz. There was no expected explosion. There was only an ear-piercing vibration. The brilliance that filled the sky was dazzling. Waves of aftershocks struck. Even the experts of Realm and Valley felt a sharp pain on their skin. At this moment, although Wu Shaoqi's pretty face was pale, her brows were as firm as ever. Her delicate hand moved continuously and she controlled the circulation of the heaven fighting seal with all her heart. After the enlightenment from before, she was able to control the circulation of the heaven fighting seal skillfully. Compared to Wu Shaoqi's relaxed state, Lu Xiangyang was in extreme pain. The lack of the origin monarch qi in his body, coupled with the strong gales on the mountaintop, made it extremely difficult for him to breathe. Under the attack of Wu Shaoqi's heaven fighting seal, his thunder fire emperor technique actually showed signs of collapsing. Big brother, how is it? Mu Yiyu's purple eyes looked at the two people on the stage. She smiled and looked at Mu Yuyang with a sweet smile. Now it seems that Wu Shaoqi should be stronger. Mu Yuyang nodded his head. His eyes revealed a trace of a smile. The strength of this batch's soaring dragon ranking was quite strong. However, compared to the past him, it was still much weaker. Not far away, Lin Dao's body was as straight as a long spear. He crossed his arms across his chest, and his eyes sparkled. He remained silent. Zhu Tianwo sat cross-legged and looked at Lu Xiangyang, who was in a disadvantageous position. There was no change in his expression. Damn it. Lu Xiangyang's face was pale. His head buzzed and the lightning fire emperor technique nearly collapsed. Immediately, he clenched his teeth and gently stroked the storage ring with his finger. A paper talisman quietly appeared between his fingers. The red color on the paper talisman was even purer. It was just like a burning flame. Kai, he quietly inserted a thread of the origin monarch chi into the paper talisman. In an instant, the paper talisman flashed like a bolt of lightning. In an instant, it arrived in front of the heaven fighting seal and exploded. In an instant, raging flames fell from the sky. The flames roared ferociously, completely surrounding the heaven fighting seal. At the same time, the fire source chi in the air surged towards them, infusing into the raging flames, in the blink of an eye. Hong Long, Wu Shaoqi was shocked by the sudden attack. The flame seemed to originate from the heaven and earth. The powerful heaven fighting seal was unable to destroy it in the slightest. Along with the infusion of the fire source chi, it felt like it was burning more and more intensely. Wu Shaoqi's chest suddenly sank. The corner of her pale mouth immediately turned dark red. Her delicate body also trembled and the heaven fighting seal was instantly pulled back quite a bit. What's going on? When everyone saw this, they were all shocked. From gaining the upper hand to suddenly retreating, even Elder Wu couldn't see what had happened clearly. Although Mu Yiyue could see it clearly, she was also filled with doubt. What exactly was that red paper talisman? It was extremely similar to the red explosive killing talisman, but also completely different. Different from everyone's shock, Zhu Tianwo only glanced at Lu Xiangyang, then looked at Wu Shaoqi. Under the attack of his sacred spirit fire body, he did not know how long this soaring dragon ranking's second expert could last. Wu Shaoqi, admit defeat. I don't want to hurt you. Lu Xiangyang, who had the upper hand, finally let out a soft sigh. After that, he spoke in a clear voice. The current situation was completely in his hands. Being forced back by Lu Xiangyang's attack, Wu Shaoqi's eyes were filled with unwillingness. She seemed to hesitate for a moment before she moved her delicate hand and was about to unleash the monarch skill. That's enough. Wu Shaoqi, you have lost. Elder Wu saw Wu Shaoqi's movement from afar and immediately cut off his voice. His thunderous voice suddenly startled everyone. Wu Shaoqi's eyes flickered after being forcefully interrupted by Elder Wu. Just now, she had helplessly let go of her hand. It was also true that it was only a competition and there was no need to use that move. All right, I have lost. Wu Shaoqi pouted. She was still unwilling in her heart. After which, she looked at Lu Xiangyang and snorted softly. She turned around and left the arena. Seeing Wu Shaoqi admit defeat so straightforwardly, Lu Xiangyang was also stunned. He then looked at the latter in surprise. From Elder Wu's words, did Wu Shaoqi still have an ultimate move that she had yet to use? When he thought of this, Lu Xiangyang snorted coldly. The origin monarch chi in his hand dispersed. No matter what, he had still won against Wu Shaoqi. He was the leader of the punishment department. Wu Shaoqi's sudden admission of defeat stunned everyone. Even Mu Yuyang let out a soft exclamation of surprise. He didn't understand what was going on. However, Xiaoyan's eyes were staring at the slowly dissipating flames on the battlefield. The excitement in his heart was getting stronger and stronger. He glanced at Wu Shaoqi and the latter sat beside him with an air of righteousness. With an unhappy expression, Elder Wu could not help but let out a bitter laugh. It was fortunate that this little girl did not use that powerful move. Otherwise, Lu Xiangyang might not even be able to crawl anymore, but Wu Shaoqi's lifespan would also be greatly reduced. That move, she definitely couldn't use it unless it was a critical moment. Alright, next match, Shaoyan and Zhu Tianwo. He shook his head. Elder Wu looked at the stage and said in a clear voice. One at the center of the square, the students' matches were still in full swing, and even though the most eye-catching few had left, the intensity of the matches still gripped everyone's heartstrings. Wang! Following a clear sword hum, before everyone could see what had happened, they were shocked to see the protective barrier in front of a young man on the stage break apart inch by inch. His chest seemed to have suffered a heavy blow as he spat out blood and flew off the stage. Xuaner's pretty face was cold as she held a broken sword hilt in her hand. In that instant, she urged the Origin Monarch Qi to enter the sword hilt. When the opponent sensed it, the sword suddenly appeared and easily shattered the defense that the latter was proud of. Xuan stored the Jade K sword into the storage ring. She smiled and glanced at Jiu Yuan and Kai Lin below the stage. She walked down the stage with light footsteps amidst the cries of the crowd. There was a trace of worry in her eyes. From time to time, she would glance in the direction of the Heaven Pillar Peak. Her smile was extremely forced. At the peak of the Heaven Pillar Peak, there was a biting cold wind. However, everyone present was an extraordinary expert. Naturally, they were not affected at all. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on the middle of the martial stage. Xiaoyan and Zhu Tianwo were standing opposite each other there. Looking at the indifferent Zhu Tianwo not far away, Xiaoyan felt some fear in his heart. It was not only because of his special physique. He clearly remembered that the latter had spent a huge amount of spirit pavilions to buy a green explosive killing talisman in the spirit pavilion. The power of the explosive killing talisman increased along with the change in color. Red, orange, yellow, green and blue. There were 7 different colors that corresponded to different powers of the explosive killing talisman. Back then, Yuan Tianmu had relied on a green explosive killing talisman to kill Shen Tu, who was comparable to a monarch emperor. Although the green explosive killing talisman was below the green color, its power was likely not something that he could withstand. What was even more unfavorable to him was the environment here. The consumption of the Origin Monarch Qi was huge. If he could not end the battle quickly, he would definitely be the first one to fall. With this thought in mind, Xiaoyan gave up on the idea of probing him first. The Origin Monarch Qi within his body surged and he unleashed the White Tiger Arts. In an instant, Origin Qi circulated around his body, emitting hissing sounds as it ripped apart the incoming strong wind. Zhu Tianwo had an indifferent expression. His red long robe flapped in the wind. When he sensed the gradual increase in Xiaoyan's aura, a ripple finally appeared in his calm eyes. Immediately, he slowly extended both of his arms. His 5 fingers turned into claws. As the Origin Qi flowed, both of his hands were already wrapped by flames. White Tiger Arts, White Tiger Spirit Sealing Flash. Xiaoyan's body suddenly increased in size. In the blink of an eye, he had covered a distance of tens of meters. The white tiger behind him roared as it rushed explosively towards Zhu Tianwo like a ferocious tiger that had descended the mountain. Firestream slash. Zhu Tianwo's eyes focused. He also let out a furious cry. The flames on his hands spread in all directions. His body did not retreat. Instead, he advanced and rushed towards Xiaoyan. Along the way, the air was burned by the flames. Sizzle sizzle. Halfway through the journey, Xiaoyan's aura suddenly changed. In the next moment, an even more powerful aura shot up from his body. Although his speed was slightly reduced, the force of his attack was even heavier. The white tiger behind him also let out a furious roar towards the sky. Light appeared all over its body, and its incorporeal body became even more solid. White Tiger Sky-Shattering Strike. The white tiger's eyes were scarlet red. Its huge tiger palm violently struck towards Zhu Tianwo. The latter had also sensed it. Even though this was the case, it was still completely fearless. The flames on its claws became even more intense. They were like 2 sharp blades as they slashed horizontally, bombarding the tiger palm without any fear. Hey! Zhang Kai raised his brows and revealed a faint smile. Although Xiaoyan's qi had increased, he was still a monarch spirit-level warrior. As for Zhu Tianwo, his current strength had already reached the level of 2 emperors. With the power of the sacred spirit fire body, it was rare for him to be a match for someone at the same level, let alone Xiaoyan, who was far weaker than an emperor. Unlike Zhang Kai's smile, Yuan Tianmu frowned. Xiaoyan had yet to display his true strength in front of Zhu Tianwo, which surprised him a little. However, in order to defeat Zhu Tianwo, even if Xiaoyan had the ability to kill Li Yin, it was still not enough. The moment before the white tiger and Zhu Tianwo's claws collided, Xiaoyan's eyes suddenly turned red. After that, the origin monarch qi in his body started roaring crazily. In an instant, the white tiger behind him became even more lifelike, as if it was real. Ow! The tiger roar seemed to have penetrated through the sky and exploded in everyone's ears. In the next moment, Xiaoyan's entire body seemed to have exploded. Under the vigorous origin monarch chi, a huge white tiger ruthlessly smashed towards Zhu Tianwo. White Tiger's spiritual spell. In a moment, Xiaoyan had unleashed all 3 remaining forms of the White Tiger arts. Each of them was stronger than the last, but they had also exhausted nearly half of the origin monarch chi. Compared to normal times, the consumption of energy in his body was even greater. The moment the White Tiger's spiritual spell was unleashed, Zhu Tianwo sensed something. His expression was no longer calm, and a trace of shock was revealed in his eyes. This feeling, middle-grade monarch arts? Faced with Xiaoyan's current imposing manner, even the martial elder could not help but be speechless. Finally, there was a trace of an unusual color in his eyes as he looked at Xiaoyan. Wu Shaoqi, who was standing at the side, also slightly opened her red lips. After that, she frowned slightly and quickly thought about it in her heart. With her current strength, even if she were to burn her life force, the power of that attack was only a middle-grade monarch arts. This Xiaoyan actually had such a powerful monarch skill. At this moment, most of the experts from the realm and valley had shocked expressions on their faces. A mid-grade monarch arts monarch skill, even among them, only a few of them had mastered it. This Xiaoyan had just arrived. How did the new disciple of the Yunluo Academy master it? This is it. Mu Yiyu's purple eyes were staring at Xiaoyan with a serious expression. The moment Xiaoyan defeated Bai Yongqiao, she had sensed this feeling in the square. Unlike Zan Kai, the expressions of the Zhou Alliance's people were solemn. Mu Yuyang only glanced at Xiaoyan indifferently. However, in his eyes, there was a trace of a smile. No wonder he was so capable. He did not fail to deserve the title of Saint-rank trial participant. Lin Dao's eyes suddenly lit up. Happiness climbed onto his brows. A mere monarch spirit level had such strength. Once he became the emperor, he would be able to be his opponent. In the face of the White Tiger's aggressiveness, a look of shock flashed across Zhu Tianwo's eyes. Immediately, his body came to a sudden stop. Without any hesitation, flames curled around his hands, and a green paper talisman was floating within it. Boom! In a split second, the huge White Tiger swallowed Zhu Tianwo. In the next moment, a deafening roar soared into the sky, stirring up endless sand and dust. With the help of this force, Xiaoyan also retreated. He panted as he looked at the smoke. At that moment, he clearly saw Zhu Tianwo take out the green explosive killing talisman. The smoke rolled. Even Mu Yiyue only saw through it after a moment. Immediately, shock surged onto her pretty face and she could not help but cry out. Huh? Mu Yuyang, Lin Dao and the other elders were startled when they sensed the burning qi in the air. After which, they looked at the dust in the sky. Soon, a figure slowly walked out from the dust. Xiaoyan fixed his eyes on the figure. It was Zhu Tianwo. At this moment, the red robe on his body had been shattered, revealing his strong upper body. His body was surrounded by flames. In Zhu Tianwo's eyes, there seemed to be flames dancing. His hair had turned into flames. On his forehead, a demonic flame symbol slowly appeared. In his hand, a flaming spear was gripped tightly. It looked like a fire god controlling the fire source of the heaven and earth. Sacred spirit fire body, Xiaoyan mumbled to himself when he saw this. Then, he chuckled. Although he had used up a lot of origin monarch qis, Zhu Tianwo's consumption was far greater than his. It was time for him to see the real deal in the upcoming competition. Xiaoyan did not hesitate at all when he thought of this. With a flip of his palm, the blue flame ruler appeared in his hand. At the same time, 3,000 lightning monarch flames in chaos great monarch flames surged onto the surface of his body and instantly wrapped around Xiaoyan. In the distance, fire source circulated around Zhu Tianwo's body. He held a flaming spear in his hand. He looked like an ancient fire god with a majestic aura. On the other side, the crimson gold flame around Xiaoyan's body was surging, and he was holding a blue flame ruler in his hand. He looked like a peerless flame emperor, and his aura was boundless. The fire god and the flame emperor's astral winds had stopped. This battle was destined to be a battle of flames. 1. This flame is. Elder Wu was dumbfounded as he stared at the crimson gold flame that suddenly appeared on Xiaoyan's body. If the feeling Zhu Tianwo gave him was surprise, then the feeling Xiaoyan gave him was completely astonishment. With his monarch emperor strength, he could naturally clearly sense who was stronger and weaker. The feeling that Zhu Tianwo gave him was that the flames seemed to have condensed from within his body. The flame that surged around Xiaoyan's body was filled with a wild and violent strength, causing him to feel ashamed. It wasn't just Elder Wu, the few elders behind him were also dumbstruck. They couldn't react in time when they saw the sudden change in Xiaoyan and Zhu Tianwo. With Zhang Kai's reminder, Yuan Tianmu wasn't really surprised by Zhu Tianwo's change, but his heart was filled with thousands of wild waves when it came to Xiaoyan. This is the first time I saw this guy. He actually hid this move in such a dangerous situation. What a good guy. When I used this move, Li Yin didn't even have the chance to attack. Yuan Tianmu's expression was solemn. His calm heart was trembling slightly. Looking at the flames flowing around Xiaoyan's body, he suddenly felt a trace of fear. The smile on Mu Yuyang's face disappeared. He looked at Xiaoyan with a more serious expression. Lin Dao, Su Qingwu, Wei Li, and the other experts of Realm and Valley all looked at the two people on the scene, deep in thought. This flame. When Zhu Tianwo saw the flame around Xiaoyan, his pupils suddenly shrank to the size of a pinhole. There was a trace of emotion on his cold face. The Saint Soul Fire Body was known as the King Body of Fire. No matter what kind of flame it was, it had a suppressive effect. However, when faced with the flame around Xiaoyan, he did not move at all. Could it be a high-grade beast fire? Zhu Tianwo frowned slightly. He also knew that his sacred spirit fire body was only at the initial stage. It was far from being completely mastered. He was somewhat powerless when faced with a high-grade heavenly beast and above beast fire. No matter what grade of beast fire it is, the sacred spirit fire body is able to suppress all flames under the heavens. Even if it's a dragon, it has to obediently crawl down for me. A cold laugh sounded. Zhu Tianwo furiously shouted. His body rushed towards Xiaoyan like a lightning bolt. The fire source qi in the air was completely controlled by him, turning into invisible sharp blades that rushed towards Xiaoyan together with his body. This is a strange feeling. Xiaoyan's deep voice did not speak. The moment the monarch flame appeared, he could clearly sense that the monarch flame had a different feeling from the past. It was as if it had an emotion as it burned even more vigorously. When he recovered his senses, a smile also surged onto the corner of Xiaoyan's mouth when he saw Zhu Tianwo rushing away. Sacred Spirit Fire Body? Flame Emperor? Let me see who is better in front of the monarch flame. Swish! Both of their bodies were like lightning as they rushed towards each other. At the peak of the Heaven Pillar Peak, the consumption of Origin Monarch Qis was extremely intense. Hence, this was basically the final attack of the both of them. Both of them seemed to have turned into flames. Crimson flames surged around Zhu Tianwo's body, making him look like a surging flood dragon as he roared furiously. Crimson gold flames circulated around Xiaoyan's body, and like a furious dragon, he charged forward without any fear. While everyone was staring at the battlefield, a figure suddenly descended from the sky. No one noticed it. The person stared at Xiaoyan. When he saw the flame on Xiaoyan's body, he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. This is a monarch flame? The person who came was Su Ziyang. He was wearing a green robe, and the strong wind from the peak of the mountain didn't affect him at all. As he looked at the flame around Xiaoyan's body, a strange look suddenly appeared in his eyes. No, it doesn't look like the 3000 lightning monarch flame. Su Ziyang's eyes stared intently at the crimson gold flame on Xiaoyan's body. After musing for a moment, he shook his head and rejected it. After which, he looked at Zhu Tianwo and the corner of his mouth revealed an unknown smile. Sacred Spirit Fire Body? This kid is really hard to come by. Looks like he is still a little weak. Not comparable to Mu Yiyu's illusion Purple Eye. He mumbled to himself a few times. Su Ziyang's body trembled and disappeared once again. In the blink of an eye, Mu Yuyang seemed to have sensed something. He frowned and looked around, but found nothing. Almost at the same time that Su Ziyang disappeared, Xiaoyan and Zhu Tianwo collided violently like two shooting stars. In an instant, the flames were overflowing, and the red flames roared. Buzz! The sound of the blue flame ruler and the flaming spear vibrating seemed to ring in everyone's hearts. As the ruler and spear bombarded, the flames surged violently. Sensing that Zhu Tianwo's strength was not inferior to his, Xiaoyan was slightly surprised. Immediately, his footsteps changed. The blue flame ruler was like a falling meteor as it slammed down fiercely. Zhu Tianwo's expression did not change. The flaming spear in his hand was raised vertically, and he firmly caught Xiaoyan's lightning-like strike. Xiaoyan's eyes sparkled. He jumped up and firmly inserted the blue flame ruler into the ground. The consumption of Origin Monarch cheese was getting faster and faster. He needed to determine the victor as soon as possible. He couldn't continue to fight with Zhu Tianwo. Zhu Tianwo had obviously thought of this as well. He gently clenched his palm. The flaming spear turned into a fiery light and dissipated, meeting Xiaoyan's gaze. In the next moment, the two of them rushed over once again at the same time. The origin chi on their bodies flowed, and they looked majestic and imposing. Hong! Xiaoyan and Zhu Tianwo's palms collided with each other. The crimson gold flame and the red flame collided and merged together. It was as if the heavenly thunder had ignited the earth fire, causing the ground where the two of them stood to split open. The intense heat caused the air to become moist and then evaporate. Zhu Tianwo's eyes were scarlet red and his red hair was fluttering in the wind. The fire symbol on his forehead was like a demonic flower that was slowly blooming. As the flower bloomed, Xiaoyan could feel that an even more intense flame and strange fluctuation was continuously surging out from within Zhu Tianwo's body. Under the influence of this fluctuation, the monarch flame actually felt as if it had broken free from his control. It is indeed interesting. When Xiaoyan saw this, he grinned, and his mind was calm. He held his yuan and guarded one. The Chaos Great Monarch flame had completely merged with his body when he entered the Fighting Monarch realm. It had already become a part of his body, and the 3,000 Lightning Monarch flames had also been devoured by the Xiaoyi. It had indirectly become a part of his body. With Zhu Tianwo's sacred spirit fire body, which he could not cultivate, trying to control his monarch flame was simply wishful thinking. Outside the arena, the joy on Zhang Kai's face slowly disappeared. He had previously promised Yuan Tianmu that the sacred spirit fire body could control all flames in the world, but when faced with Xiaoyan's flames, he actually did not move at all. How is this possible? Seeing that the sacred spirit fire body's ability had no effect on Xiaoyan's flames, Zhu Tianwo's fiery brows couldn't help but tremble. The demonic flower on his forehead had already fully bloomed. Almost all of the fire source chi in this area was subservient to him. It continuously flowed into Zhu Tianwo's body, increasing the power of the sacred spirit fire body. However, the flames around Xiaoyan did not show any signs of movement. What kind of flame is this? The intense consumption of the origin monarch chi caused Zhu Tianwo to gasp for breath. He clearly felt that he could knock Xiaoyan down with a single strike, but the flames that Xiaoyan possessed were like an insurmountable barrier that couldn't be penetrated. Xiaoyan was already sweating profusely. He felt a wave of dizziness in front of his eyes. Although he didn't have any problems controlling the monarch flame's strength, the consumption of his mental energy was extremely huge. Hearing Zhu Tianwo's voice, Xiaoyan looked at him and was about to say something. Suddenly, the demonic flower on Zhu Tianwo's forehead trembled. At the same time, Zhu Tianwo's movement froze. Xiaoyan was stunned for a moment before he quickly recovered his senses. The remaining origin monarch chis in his body surged out wildly and gathered on his palms. The monarch flames violently surged and broke through Zhu Tianwo's flame barrier like rotten weeds. They violently smashed onto the latter's chest. One at the top of the heaven pillar peak, the stellar energy tore through the air, causing a buzzing sound to be heard. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the martial stage without exception. Xiaoyan's palms were placed on Zhu Tianwo's chest, and the latter was sent flying. Zhu Tianwo's face was flushed red, and his chest was almost caved in. His body was sent flying backwards, and blood was flowing out from his nose. Wah! Just as he was about to fall off the martial stage, the space behind him suddenly became chaotic. Fire source chi surged violently in the air. It turned into a fire net that was hard to see with the naked eye behind him, and caught Zhu Tianwo steadily. With a leap, Zhu Tianwo landed on the martial stage. Both of his eyes were red as he stared at Xiaoyan, who was also gasping for breath. Endless shock flashed across his eyes. His palm touched his face. The blood on his face was burned into nothingness by the flame. He stared at Xiaoyan and asked in a deep voice, "What is your flame?" Xiaoyan was breathing heavily. Even though the origin monarch chi had merged with the yin and yang, which was a huge improvement compared to before, under such a huge consumption of energy, it was still green and yellow. The weakness in his body made him dizzy. After listening to Zhu Tianwo's words, Xiaoyan raised his head and smiled, but he did not say anything. Seeing Xiaoyan's appearance, Zhu Tianwo suddenly shouted, "The sacred fire body is the sacred body of fire. It can control all kinds of flames. No matter what kind of flame it is, it will tremble in front of me. How can you be safe and sound?" At this moment, the demonic flower on Zhu Tianwo's forehead had dimmed. The redness in his eyes had become even thicker. Sacred spirit fire body? It's actually the sacred spirit fire body? Elder Wu was stunned when he heard this. His eyes revealed a trace of shock. Then, as if he had thought of something, his sharp eyes instantly stared at Xiaoyan. He muttered in his heart, according to the ancient records, the sacred spirit fire body is known as the Emperor Physique of Fire. It can control 10,000 flames, but there is a type of flame in the great world. It has long since broken away from the category of ordinary flames, reaching the level of a sacred object. Even a fully mastered sacred spirit fire body might not be able to completely control it. This fellow actually possesses a monarch flame. Elder Wu's gaze was like a sword as he instantly saw through the flame around Xiaoyan's body. Immediately, he was secretly speechless as he exclaimed in shock. Since he possessed a monarch flame, it was likely that he was not inferior to Mu Yuyang, who was at the same time as him. Xiaoyan merely snorted softly in the face of Zhu Tianwo's question. The lack of origin monarch qi in his body caused him to feel quite uncomfortable. On the other hand, although Zhu Tianwo had a tired expression, he was a little better compared to Xiaoyan. "I'll let you see the true power of the sacred spirit fire body." Zhu Tianwo's eyes were as red as blood. The demonic flower on his forehead bloomed once again, like a holy spirit that had awakened from the dead, blooming with a demonic red. Boom! As the flower bloomed again, Zhu Tianwo's body seemed to be filled with strength once again. Scarlet flames curled around his body, and the surrounding fire source roared. Like a peerless fire god, he rushed towards Xiaoyan. The flow of the fire source energy around him could naturally be clearly felt by Xiaoyan. Under the control of Zhu Tianwo's sacred spirit fire body, it felt like the sky and earth were pressing down on him. This guy is overdrawing his ability? Mu Yiyu's illusory purple eyes could see the flow of the origin qi in Zhu Tianwo's body more clearly than the others. When she saw the shocking changes in Zhu Tianwo's body, she couldn't help but open her red lips and reveal a trace of shock on her pretty face. When Mu Yuyang heard this, his expression became solemn. He looked at Elder Wu, who was not far away. When he saw that the latter did not have any reaction, he immediately furrowed his brows as if he was thinking about something. Xiaoyan inhaled a deep breath of air in the face of Zhu Tianwo's strength. Both of his feet tightly grabbed onto the ground. Spiritual strength flowed out from between his brows as he carefully observed Zhu Tianwo's actions. At the same time, the monarch flame was already grasped in his palm. He poured the remaining few origin monarch qis within his body into it. In an instant, the monarch flame had already swelled with the wind. The hot flame seemed to have even incinerated the space. Who? Zhu Tianwo's figure was like a meteor shower. Within a few breaths, he had arrived in front of Xiaoyan. His 10 fingers were like claws. The flame on them surged. The fire source qi around his body whistled as he arrived. His aura was overbearing. On Zhu Tianwo's forehead, the flower was blooming in a demonic manner. If one looked closely, it looked like it was going to explode at any moment. A crimson liquid slowly flowed down. Both of his eyes were blood red, and they were filled with a brutal aura. Xiaoyan had a solemn expression. The moment Zhu Tianwo attacked, the qi in his body rose abruptly. Flames surged around his body as he attacked Zhu Tianwo. Hong! A shocking explosion that wasn't as expected was heard. Xiaoyan and Zhu Tianwo were stunned for a moment, and they looked at it carefully. A young man had appeared between the two of them. He stood between the two of them and extended both of his hands, blocking all of Zhu Tianwo's and Xiaoyan's attacks. After a moment of shock, Xiaoyan immediately reacted. He looked at Mu Yuyang in front of him in shock. The latter had a calm expression on his face. With just a palm, he had blocked his attack. Surprise flashed across Zhu Tianwo's bright red eyes. Immediately, he furiously cried out, "Mu Yuyang, what are you trying to do?" Everyone looked at the arena in shock. Mu Yiyue blinked her eyes and seemed to have understood something. She remained silent and did not speak. Mu Yuyang, Elder Wu frowned, then stood up and said in a cold voice, Disturbing the competition in Heaven Pillar Peak, even the students of Relman Valley had gone too far. However, Mu Yuyang was not only a student, he was also a Saint rank trial participant. He also had the authority of a rank 2 elder in the academy, so Elder Wu didn't dare to fall out with him on the spot. Elders, this competition is exciting, but if you continue watching, I'm afraid you will regret it. Mu Yuyang glanced at Xiaoyan and Zhu Tianwo, smiled and said to Elder Wu in a clear voice. What do you mean? Elder Wu frowned when he heard this. The anger in his heart had calmed down a lot. With Mu Yuyang's character, he would never do something that he didn't want to do. Thinking of this, his tone softened a lot. Everyone knows about my sister's illusion Purple Eye, so they can see more than everyone else. This match is no longer a simple match, it is a battle to the death that overdrains one's ability. At this point, Mu Yuyang smiled lightly. He said in a clear voice, the Academy's match naturally cannot be fought to the death. Tell the elders and elders that it is impossible to fight to the death. It is already too late. I can only act rashly. I hope that all the elders will forgive me. Although he said that he would forgive, Mu Yuyang had a smile on his face, and his tone was quite relaxed. After hearing Mu Yuyang's words, Elder Wu couldn't help but smile bitterly. His body moved and he arrived at the scene. He looked at Xiaoyan and Zhu Tianwo. Both of their auras were quite low. Zhu Tianwo's face was even paler. It was obvious that the attack just now had consumed too much of his strength. You are right. The life force in this guy's body is a little low. Shaking his head, Elder Wu could only nod his head silently. Oh. After listening to the conversation between the two, the veins on Zhu Tianwo's forehead bulged. Just as he was about to speak, the weakness in his body attacked like floodwater. He was blown by the biting cold wind and instantly fainted on the ground. Xiaoyan took a deep look at Mu Yuyang. When he sensed the vast and boundless origin monarch qi within Mu Yuyang's body, he clicked his tongue and sighed in his heart. He exhaled a breath of air and looked at the endless mountains in the distance. His vision turned black and he fainted. There was still quite a distance between him and Mu Yuyang even though they were both Saint rank trial participant.